So they still tried to keep the Confederacy going after the Civil War was over? Oh wow. Welcome back, guys, to another captivating episode on the Anything History channel. Today, we embark on a detailed exploration of a lesser-known chapter in history, the migration of Confederates to Brazil following the American Civil War. In the aftermath of the Civil War, which ended in 1865, the southern states of the United States lay in ruins, with many Southerners facing a bleak and uncertain future. Rather than rebuilding their lives in a nation that had abolished slavery and undergone significant political and social changes, thousands of Confederate sympathizers sought refuge in distant lands, including Brazil. They would now choose to become Confederados, which is the Brazilian name for Confederate expatriates. These people were all white Southerners, along with their black slaves, who fled the southern United States during Reconstruction, and their Brazilian descendants. The Confederados don't appear in most history books, but 150 years ago, people from Texas, Alabama, and Georgia sailed to Brazil in hopes of preserving the ways of the unreconstructed South. The Brazilian emperor at the time, Dom Pedro II, had expressed support for the Confederate cause during the Civil War, viewing it as a struggle for states' rights. This sentiment, coupled with Brazil's ongoing reliance on slave labor, made the country an attractive destination for Southerners seeking to preserve their way of life. Brazil welcomed the defectors. For years, it had tried and failed to catch up with agricultural development in the U.S. Dom Pedro II of Brazil hoped to plant the seeds of prosperity by importing these self-exiling Southerners. The Brazilian government paid to advertise, set up informational agencies across the Bible Belt, and even offered to pay relocation costs for all Americans willing to make the move. Confederates saw immigration as an opportunity to rebuild their lives. Dom Pedro offered land to the Confederados for as little as 22 cents an acre. So in Brazil, they could buy land on the cheap and rebuild their plantations with the help of then-legal slaves. Between the late 1860s and the early 1870s, despite being publicly urged not to go by the likes of Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis, an estimated 8,000 to 20,000 Confederates left the United States for Brazil, with the majority settling in the southern regions of the country. These Confederate migrants were drawn by the promises by Brazil, most of them by the opportunity to continue practicing slavery, which had been fortunately abolished in the United States following the Civil War. One of the most notable Confederado settlements was established in the state of São Paulo, where several communities were founded by American immigrants. Among these settlements was the city of Americana, which grew from a small agricultural outpost into a thriving urban center. A group of settlers, led by Colonel William Hutchinson Norris from Alabama, introduced cotton and other agricultural innovations to the countryside of São Paulo. Their tribe flourished. In the little community they named Americana, the children spoke English with a southern accent for generations. They eventually married into the local population. The population grew to 200,000, and the Brazilian identity took over. Their American heritage was eventually reduced to Western movies and country music, which they still enjoyed. But these American expatriates never came close to replicating the large slaveholding estates of the Deep South. The Confederados struggled to adapt to their new homes. In many of the Brazilian settlements, the climate and soil were ill-suited for the types of crops they wanted to keep growing, such as cotton. Disease, insect infestations, and internal power struggles likewise took a toll, as did a lack of transportation infrastructure that made it difficult for them to get their crops to market. There were letters written and sent back to family that said the Confederados were just homesick, not just for their family members, but also for the way of life. A number of them gave up and returned back to the U.S. Political support also dried up, as Dom Pedro became distracted by an economic downturn, his country's participation in the gruesome War of the Triple Alliance, and his own worsening health. Today, Americana still bears traces of its Confederate heritage, with street names, monuments, and annual festivals celebrating the city's American roots. Each year, the small Brazilian city of Americana throws a huge celebration called Festa of the Fraternidade Descendentia Americana, a sort of brotherhood to commemorate the Confederates who fled the American South after their side lost the Civil War. But a new municipal law could mean the end of the annual celebration and any other public event commemorating the Confederacy. The ordinance bans the use of racist symbols at public festivals, and the Confederate flag and this festival in Santa Barbara do Oeste are specifically named in the justification for the law, which passed with near unanimous support. The conflict here mirrors the ongoing debate over Confederate symbols and monuments in the United States, despite taking place thousands of miles south of the Mason-Dixon line. For residents, however, it's a hyper-local dispute about representation and balancing the legacy of slavery in Brazil with the unusual story of American immigrants who settled in this small town a century and a half ago. The law's passage has raised the stakes on how this unique history should best be honored. While some are doubling down on the importance of the Confederate flag, others are using the ordinance as an opportunity to give new voice to often overlooked narratives in Santa Barbara do Oeste. How the city identifies a middle ground between remembering the past and recognizing the weight of historic symbols could serve as a roadmap for other hot-button issues vexing an increasingly polarized Brazil in the future. As you have heard, the transition to life in Brazil was not without its challenges for the Confederados and them trying to create a lasting legacy. Accustomed to the agrarian lifestyle of the American South, many struggled to adapt to Brazil's tropical climate, unfamiliar agricultural practices, and tensions between the Confederate immigrants and the Brazilian population, leading to cultural clashes and misunderstandings. Despite these challenges, the Confederados left a lasting imprint on Brazilian society and culture. Their descendants continue to honor their heritage and maintain ties to their American roots, even as Brazil underwent significant social and political changes in the decades following their arrival. And so, as we delve into the fascinating history of the Confederados, we are reminded of the intricate connections between nations and peoples, as well as the enduring legacies of migration and cultural exchange. Did the Civil War come to an end? What do you think? Well, of course it did. Yet some people would not let it go, and wanted to hold on to faulty traditions in the memory of a civil battle long lost. The original documents of the Confederacy show quite clearly that the war was based on one thing: slavery. For example, in its Declaration of Secession, Mississippi explained, "Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. A blow at slavery is a blow at commerce and civilization." Wow. Today, I would say unity does not come in that divisive rhetoric. If you think about it, a group of people were oppressed and truly hurt in the life that they lived before the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln and others insisted that the practice of slavery come to an end. Rebellion to that decree led to the tragic Civil War written in American history. The Confederacy lost in the end, so why would anyone want to hang on to that losing legacy? I wonder if any of them ever asked the slaves how it felt to be another man's property. And it might be smart to be a little careful in conjuring up old memories, or wanting to relive a time where some were not even seen as 100% human. Just putting that out there for consideration. But please join us next time on the Anything History channel as we continue to unravel the rich tapestry of our shared past. Comment, like, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more captivating stories from around the world.